श्री वल्लभाधीश की जय. Aj Varutani Ekadashi, the appearance day of Sri Vallabhacharya Ji. Jai ho, Sri Vallabhadhish ki sada jai ho, sada sarvata jai ho. Sabko Jai Shri Krishna. Jai Shri Radhe. Today is the 25th day of our readings. Continuing with the story of Govinda Das, Varta 11, Part 2. Thus, Govinda Das left the Seva in Jetipura. He came to Mathura. He wanted to serve because he was, after all, a divine soul, so he accepted a position to serve Sri Kishori, which was actually a step backwards. First of all, he quit Sri Mathuranathji Seva in Mahavan. Then he served Sri Govindanathji. Fair enough. But he left his service there to now go and serve in the mode of the path of lawful limitations, so that was a step backwards. One day, Govindasji had a new bed and mattress with wide tape made for Sri Kishori. He gave the craftsman lots of nice sweets and nuts and fruits whilst he was sewing it. It was a gorgeous bed. The Muslim ruler of the district also had a bed made there, but someone told him it was not half as nice as the one that was made for Sri Kishori. The ruler came to the temple. He saw the Lord's bed in a cupboard, pulled it out and sat on it. Someone came and told Govindas that this had happened. Govindas came there straight away with a sword and killed the Hakim. His men immediately stayed Govindas. The Vaishnavas of Mathura heard this and performed the last retake. His men immediately slayed Govindas. The Vaishnavas of Mathura heard this and performed the last rites for Govindas. When somebody told Sri Charya about all of this, they asked him why a Vaishnava met with such a fate. Sri Acharyaji explained, he has not endangered his fate. In the next world, he would still enjoy the fate of an accomplished Vaishnava devotee. However, here he refused to accept my instructions, and thus this end to his life. In a life previous to this, he was a buffalo in Sri Nandaraji's house. Sri Thakurji used to ride on top of him. One day he struck Sri Thakurji with his tail, hence this punishing fate. And when Sri Thakurji's temple was being built, he had to carry lots of building materials on his back. Bhav Prakash. The inner meaning. In his previous life, he had to carry heavy burdens, and in this life he still had to carry burdens. The circumstances of his life were founded upon those previous actions and the resulting status. In the Saraswat Kalp, he always carried a sword and conveyed taxes to Kamsa. In the Leela, his name is Mansukha, a cowherd. When Sri Krishna stole clothes and money from the dhobi, the washerman, when he entered Mathura, Mansukha took a share to give to Kamsa. After this, he slew many along his way. 5 or 10 of them did not die. They were only half dead. The inimical feeling that arose from such incidents and his behaviour carried on across his births. In the Shvet Baraha Kalpa, he was born as the buffalo in Nandaraji's home. This was at least 5,000 years before. The buffalo whipped Sri Thakurji with his tail, which was offensive. The Hakim of Mathura was a crude man of dirty habits. He used to look after Kamsa. Govinda Das killed him knowing that he had taken so much from so many in taxes, but now, in this time, he had sat on Sri Thakurji's bed. Govinda Das saw him as necessarily expendable, and so he slew him. The 5 or 10 people that had been left for dead by him now became the ones who killed him in retaliation. Then all of the enmity came to an end. After that, he could be incarnated as a cowherd in Sri Nandaraji's entourage. Enmity generates enmity, and love generates love. Enmity generates enmity, and love generates love. Govinda Das was an accomplished Vaishnava, and his story warns us about the negative effect of pride, also never to ignore the Guru's order, again never to leave the seva of a Pushti Margi Thakurji to serve in the way of the path of lawful limitations. Never. In this way, Govinda Das was a recipient of Sri Acharyaji's great grace. Thus concludes Varta 11, the story of Govinda Das Bhalla, although there is truly no end to his story. Now, commencing Varta 12, the story of Amma Kshatrani from Kara. Bhav Prakash. In the eternal Leela, Amma had been Rohini. She lived in Nandaraji's home. She left and went to live in Mathura, but her heart was always in the villages of Vraj. Now, when she met Sri Acharyaji, she regained her status within the Vraja Leela, his pastimes in Sri Vrajadham. She had very strong motherly feelings. As Amma Kshatrani, she lived in Kara in a large family, and she had 2 sons of 2 and 4 years of age. All of a sudden, Amma's husband, mother-in-law, father-in-law, mother and father all died. She was left alone with her 2 sons. Gadadhar Das also lived in Kara, and Sri Acharyaji was living in his home. One day in her dreams, Sri Krishna appeared to her and told her to go and become the disciple of Sri Acharyaji in the morning, and that he was also with Sri Acharyaji, and she should begin to serve him in that form. Then she woke up and began to pine for the Lord, so the time passed very slowly until the morning, for she was anxious to be accepted by Sri Acharyaji. Early in the morning she bathed and came to Sri Acharyaji, to whom she bowed low. She told Sri Acharyaji that in the night Sri Thakurji had come to her and told her to become his disciple, and that he was also there in the form of Sri Balakrishna Lalji, whom she should take home and begin to serve. Seeing her pure heart, Sri Acharyaji gave her the first initiation. A Brahmin from South India had left a little deity of child Krishna with Sri Acharyaji, and then gone to Badrikashram, where he had left his body. He gave that same Sri Thakurji to Amma. He told her that the Sri Thakurji's name was Sri Balakrishna Lalji, and that she should love him as a child and serve him in this very form. Thus was his blessing to her. Amma had 2 sons. They were really Sri Krishna's 2 close friends named Arjun, the elder one, and Bhoj. Sri Acharyaji initiated them as well and told Amma to make sure they never ate anything except prasad, because they were related to the eternal Leela. If they were to eat anything other than prasad, then a distance would develop between them and Sri Thakurji. If they were to eat anything other than prasad, then a distance would develop between them and Sri Thakurji. Having blessed Ammaji in this way, Sri Acharyaji travelled on to Varanasi. After becoming a renunciate, he deceived the demonic souls by apparently leaving his body. Asura Vyamoha Leela. Part 1. Amma Kshatrani served her lord very lovingly, in the mood of mother to child, Vatsalya Bhav. Her 2 sons called her Amma, and Sri Thakurji began to call her that as well. Sri Thakurji also used to play with her 2 sons. They would rub bricks on the ground and make red powder out of them, which they then used to rub on themselves and throw up in the air. Amma was overjoyed to see these games. As a mother would, she told them off. "What kind of game is this? Be careful of your eyes." Not long after this, her elder son suddenly died. After finishing her seva, she would sit and cry. Sri Thakurji would come to her and say, "Amma, don't cry." He tried to stop her, but she still cried. After some time more, her younger son also passed away. Her crying increased. Sri Thakurji tried to stop her, but she would not listen. So Sri Thakurji told Sri Gosaiji and Adel that Ammaji couldn't stop mourning and that he was very sad as a result. He told Sri Gosaiji to do something about it. Bhav Prakash. Both sons died in a young age, so that they would not get corrupted by worldly life. Both sons died in their young age so that they would not get corrupted by worldly life. Amma had been thinking about their marriages and other things, but they were very close friends of Sri Thakurji, and he called them back very quickly to himself. Amma was an accomplished Vaishnava, so why did she cry? She was not mourning the death of her sons, rather the fact that Sri Thakurji no longer had his playmates with whom he would even play with the brick dust, and she could no longer enjoy watching them all playing. Her sons had been Sri Thakurji's favourite toys. Now with whom could he play? This was why she cried so much, and why Sri Thakurji, being very pleased with her, kept telling her not to cry any more. He could not tolerate her sadness. He would not have spoken thus to her if she had just been mourning her sons for her own sake. Part 1 continued. Sri Gosaiji then went to Kara from Adel and came to her house, where she told her, "Please don't cry. You are making Thakurji very sad." After saying this to her, he gave her the sight of her 2 sons in their forms as Sri Thakurji's best friends. He told her that it was better for them to have died early than to have become involved in worldly matters. So Ammaji at last stopped crying. She loved Sri Thakurji very much, and she would rub fragrant oils into her hands before she woke him, in case her hands were too rough for his tender young body. She served the Lord with great love. The type of oil she used was Sondha, which represents Sri Swaminiji's love for her beloved Lord. Ammaji served him in the mood of the gopis, Rohini and Yashodaji, and he was therefore very pleased with her service. We continue with the part 2 of Ammaji's story tomorrow. Jai Jai Shri Radhe. Shri Vallabhacharya Ji ki Jai Ho, Jai Ho, Jai Ho, Sada Sarvada Jai Ho. Jai Shri Krishna Sabko.